Ann Handley, are you ready to fearlessly question today?
I am ready, Joey.
I like the enthusiasm. A good feeling, good vibes already. Um,
Good.
and we briefly, I mean, I'm talking like not even a cup of coffee met like for 5 seconds at inbound 14. I doubt you remember it.
I do.
You do? There's no way you remember that because I don't even remember it, and I was there.
I was sitting there with Joe
I'll
Pulizzi,
see.
wasn't
You
I?
do remember? Yes, because there was an awkward guy that I was with who took your picture with Joe. It was kind of weird. He
Yes.
walks around with
That's
a
right.
camera, and I had to distance myself from him several occasions, but it was okay. I'm glad
I
it.
think he really wanted Joe's picture. I think I was standing there and he felt too rude to say, "Could you?" So
We got a picture. I don't know if you ever got that picture. I don't know if it exists, if it's framed in your office somewhere, but
it's not. I would like that picture actually. Joe's a good friend. So I would love to
well, I'll see.
have him.
Maybe I'll try to get down for it. I'm sure I can get it. I'm sure I can get my hands on it. That probably is not. If I could do anything for you today, I don't know about a good conversation, but if I could do anything, I can get you a picture.
Get me that photo,
But
right?
actually, that's
Exactly.
that's not my that's not my biggest claim to fame when it comes to you. I don't know if you remember this either, but my biggest claim to fame is I helped you understand the difference between Chromecast and Apple TV. I don't know if you remember that.
You know what? That's so funny that you brought that up because it came up on my time hop on what day did we talk? Was it Tuesday?
We talked. Boy, now you're just really pressing my memory here. I don't know. We talked
No,
sometime
what was this
Monday. We
week?
talked Monday. Yes, Monday.
Monday, right.
Yeah.
So on Monday, it showed up on my time hop, and I was like, and it was after our conversation, otherwise I would have mentioned it. But I was just like, yes, that was exactly it. Apple, because I was debating Apple TV, Chromecast, or the Roku. I think the Roku 3.
We had already had the Chromecast in the house, if my memory serves, and I'm thinking to myself during the whole thing, it's like Ann Handley, she writes books, she's a pretty big time. I mean, why doesn't she just buy all three? I mean, let's just get serious here. I didn't know Ann Handley really like had a pretty tight internet streaming budget. I didn't know. I mean, I don't know what kind of things she.
I know it. I'm only willing to stream if it's under $37, and the Pro.
I didn't take you for that kind of internet streaming person, but
No,
hey,
you know what the big thing was? So my teenage daughter is a huge YouTube fan, right? So she wanted the ability to watch YouTube on on our big screen. So that's what the issue was. So that's what I was. That was my objective. So really, it wasn't so much a price as much as a feature issue.
we made the right choice, and it's okay. And I mean, you're an internet marketer. You can say that you like YouTube too. It's okay.
Well, I don't really watch a lot of
Uh,
I wouldn't want to watch them on the big screen. Like I'm more a Netflix kind of person, so that's what I wanted to do.
You like to keep your YouTube viewing private. You don't want others to know what kind of videos you're watching.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Well, we
Very
will
secret about my
we
YouTube.
we will try and get a little bit serious. I said in our conversation on Monday that we might not say a serious thing between the two of us this entire time, and we'll see how it goes.
So far, we're good.
But yeah, we're doing well so far. And why don't you catch everybody up? You did a little bit in your rant video leading up to this, but tell us your story as it relates to fearlessly questioning, opting out, and some other things like that.
Sure. So my story, as relates to fearlessly questioning, goes back to, speaking of inbound, goes back to inbound 13, I guess it was, when I shared a story about my incredibly introverted life as a child, and about how I was basically just afraid of everything, just a bunch of weird stuff. My brother's friends, the smell of the cellar, anybody who ever came to our house to visit. And so I told this whole story about what a sort of weird kid I was. And then also shared the story of how I kind of got over that, how I realized that just hiding and opting out consistently wasn't really going to get me where I wanted to be, because I also had a certain ambition, so to speak. And so I shared that story about what that mechanism was. And what it was an episode that happened when I was in the fourth grade. And the teacher, our teacher at the time, who was one of these super engaged teachers who really prized herself on getting, 150% class participation and just really challenging kids to speak up and be vocal and be active in the classroom. Exactly the kind of teacher that I loathed, by the way, because she sort of screwed with my philosophy about school, which was to keep my head down and, align myself with the person in front of me and be very, very quiet and kind of under the radar. But she didn't do under the radar. She didn't let anybody go under the radar. So one day she sent us all out onto the field hockey field to engage in some sort of leadership game. I don't even know what it was. Now when I think back on it, I've tried to remember what it was, what the objective actually was, and I'm not sure. But if there was one thing that I hated more than I hated attention, it would be sports, right? I was terrible at sports, and so I sort of did a double opt out in the sense that she only had enough sticks to go around for half the class. So the idea was that midway through, she blew the whistle, we were supposed to switch, and the kids on the sidelines were supposed to go out in the field. And so when she blew that whistle, I had been on the sidelines, and I just sort of set my sights on the jockiest, beefiest girl that I could find, and I told her she could have a double turn. And she was psyched, and I was completely counting on the teacher to not notice that I was not out on the field, which I don't think she did, but she did notice that that really aggressive, athletic girl was out on the field again. So she questioned her on it, and the girl ratted me out, essentially. Which, it sounds like such a small thing, but to me at the time it was, so devastating on a couple of different levels. Number one, that I actually was found out to be opting out of something, so she made a huge stink about it, called my parents, involved the principal, all this other stuff. Because remember, she was a teacher who really loved class participation, and she thought it was a good way to teach me a lesson, so to speak, in a positive way. But the other reason was that I ended up getting an F on my report card that year, and for that particular class, and it really devastated me, and it really just sort of shook me out of this notion that you can opt out and still succeed in life. And so I look back on that now, and I think, that's such an elementary story. It's probably a story that's happened to so many versions of that story, probably happened to so many kids all around the world. But, for me, that was just the mechanism that, sort of triggered me out of this mindset of consistently saying no and opting out and hiding, and into being more willing to challenge myself to do things that I needed to do to succeed.
Well, you kind of answered my first question that I had, so doing good right now. But when you said that, she kind of screwed up your whole plans in school to kind of sit back and not participate. That was me. So that's where we I said, all right, yes, Ann, we're going to be good friends, even though we're not. But I think we have a connection here, and should we be forced to do that kind of stuff? I mean, first of all, I guess the flaw in your plan with the whole field hockey thing, you should have went for that middle of the road person. I mean, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't have a better plan. I think
Recon strategy was really weak, don't you think?
Well, I mean, it's like if you're gonna steal something, at least be good at it. It's like if you're gonna, just at least be good at picking the right person and not be a beast on the field hockey team. But I mean, should we be forced to kind of do these things, or should it be something that should come natural, or at least have it be more of our own idea?
To opt into situations like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of an age-old question, I guess. That teacher's philosophy was definitely that we should be forced. But to her credit, when I think back on her now, I mean, she was actually a phenomenal teacher. Really, all she was doing was encouraging us. And so, when I think back on it now, she was a gift, in so many ways. Probably for most students in that classroom, aside from me. So the 29 other kids who were in that classroom probably loved the heck out of her. It's just that I wasn't prepared for something like that. And so I think it really goes back to, I mean, we could really sit here all day in a therapy session about, Ann's upbringing, but it kind of goes back to, I was never, my parents, for example, never suggested that I might not want to be that I might want to challenge myself a little bit more. Like, they never encouraged me to sort of step out of my comfort zone at all. So I think that's why that situation was particularly uncomfortable for me, because, you get into the 4th grade and all of a sudden it's like, wait, what? And so I don't know that would really happen today to, I think of my own kids, and they were challenged really early on to challenge themselves, but I was raised in a different point, almost before parenting was really invented, as far as that. Before self-esteem was invented, we didn't think about stuff. My parents didn't think about stuff like that. I think in their minds it was like, oh, she's happy. She's got a book. She's under her bed. What's weird about that? Where I think, in modern parenting, we would probably not let that go on for quite as long as it did.
Well, I'm going to push back on this, because I have 2 little ones. They're not even close to being able to do anything like that yet. But, I mean, again, I sat through high school and most of college saying, I don't want to talk to you. Like, I just, you're not giving me much reason. If you're making me read out loud in class, like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever experienced. And, um, but yet here we are. I mean, obviously you've done it a little bit better than I have, but we're talking to lots of people. I mean, you go from, opting out in gym class to, I don't know what your Twitter follower count is, but it's beyond 80,000 last time I checked. I mean, how does that happen? You're writing books. I mean, you're speaking in front of tons of people.
Yeah.
What kind of flipped in your head?
What flipped in my head was that even though I might have the impulse to say no, that I should maybe think about whether that's really what I want. Because the reality is, even though I was saying no, I really didn't like being introverted. I didn't necessarily like being that way. I was filled with anxiety, right? So I think that the point that I really do take away from that is that, at some level you choose who you're going to be, right? You can be that kid under the bed, and if you're totally happy being that kid under the bed, that's great. But when I think back on it, I wasn't really all that happy. I was just, I just didn't know how else to cope, really, because I was so incredibly introverted. So, I guess we all find our own place, but I think it's at some point, if you don't want to be that person, you've got to decide that I'm not going to be that person. And that's really what happened. I don't think anything, nobody forced me necessarily. It was really me deciding, I need to empower myself to not be that kid, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life opting out and saying no and hiding under the bed and being afraid. And that's really how I was.
Yeah, and so there's two kind of parts of this. So there's like saying no, being introverted, but then there's like, it's beyond, it's not so much introvertedness, it's the ability to not kind of see opportunity. When I kind of think of opting out, it's just like, I don't want to do that because it's too much work or whatever. It's not so much being shy. So the question I have to you is then how much of this opting out kind of thing that we're beating into the ground here, how much of that is more opportunity blindness, as I like to say?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to me, I think there was a lot of opportunity blindness. I assumed that I could be fine, just sort of going along and being the way I was. And it wasn't until that point in the field that day that I thought, I can't be this way. I can't opt out of everything and still be a success. At the time, success was defined by grades. But I think, fast forward, 20 or 30 years, and I define it differently now. But I guess, ultimately what ended up happening there was just sort of self-actualizing that, I need to be different. I need to do something a little bit differently if I want to pursue opportunities. And so, so I guess for me it was probably a little of both.
Well, we will let you take a break from fielding the questions, and this time we're going to let you turn the tables on everybody else and ask kind of everybody a fearless question of your own that you've always wanted to know the answer to, a little bit curious, but were unsure of the response that you were going to get. What question would that be?
Let's see. You promised me that it didn't have to be anything all that serious, right?
I mean, I tell that to people before the show. I don't. I mean, now you just kind of let the secret out of the bag, but.
Oh, geez.
Now you're just pulling the curtain back and letting all the magic fly out.
I don't know if it's necessarily a fearless question, but here's my question. Kindle or paper book?
I like that. There are deeper implications that can go beyond that if you wanted to read into that. If you had to answer your own question.
Oh, paper book for sure. I have the Kindle app on my iPad, and I have read, it's kind of fun to read on the Kindle, but I don't know, something about it it doesn't have the same feel to me. I don't like the lack of the paper. It doesn't feel quite as tactical and feels less real in some ways. But
this is a perfect question because this comes down to personal preference versus kind of overall good of kind of the world thing. So books being printed on paper versus doing something that's more eco-friendly, if you will. How much of that weighs into that? You're saying, yeah, I like these, this paper thing, but I know that if I could save a tree, I might as well.
So in other words, I'm just a jerk if I read a print book.
Your words, not mine, Ann. Your words, not mine.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like, I do my part with that, but when it comes to books, I just really like a print book.
So you're saying offset it, just be selfish, pick your thing to be selfish about, and offset it with something else.
To be selfish about. I guess that's one way to think about it. Yeah, just as long as you use recyclable supermarket bags, then you're okay. If you bring your bags with you to the grocery store, you can read a print book. I feel like I could read like 20 print books a year because I do that. Does that make sense? Probably not. Probably that math.
I will buy that right now. I will if I change my mind, I will let you know. But if I have to answer your question, I'm definitely not a Kindle, but a tablet version of reading. I mean, this is the thing I like to admit about myself the least, and that is I don't read books that much. I think I told you as much in an email. I wish I had the attention span, but when I do read a book, it's going to be on electronic form. Actually, keeping something around me often enough to when I'm in the mood to read, it's not going to happen. So, but I'm ashamed, and I'll hang my head down.
I think of print books as, it's like I love reading print books, and so when I get to very close to the end, like when I'm within, say, 50 pages or something like that, if it's a book that I really, really love, I often will just set it aside for weeks because I don't want it to end. So, in the sense that I don't want to lose the characters, I don't want to let go. And so when I finally do finish a book, it somehow feels like, it's going to sound completely strange, but it somehow feels comforting to me to still have that on my bookshelf. It's almost like I still have my friends are there if I want them, and I don't get that feel from reading a book on a tablet or a Kindle or something.
Well, very good. And I think if I were to change the format or the medium, I would say if it's not so much books, but if you were to say music, for me, it's I still actually buy CDs. I'm still holding out buying like digital music, so I need the actual physical thing. It sounds better. I like it. So, or video games to a lesser extent, which is another childish thing that I hold on to. But I think everyone has that thing where it does feel better to actually have it, like a physical thing to touch. Is that like a weird psychological thing we will never be able to break, no matter how much we want to?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I have friends you probably have friends like this too, but they still collect vinyl albums, so I guess it's a similar impulse,
I wanted to be one of those guys, but I feel like I would have gotten into it too late into the game and would have just been like that guy trying too hard, so maybe one day.
I guess you have to make a decision really early on. That's a good thing. Like, I feel like you could write a whole list of things to tell your children. Like, when you're 12 years old, start, collecting vinyl albums or something like that. So.
Well, it's funny. My this is going to really come full circle. My children, they are going to be 4 and going to be 2. They both actually got their own tablets for Christmas this year, and think what you want of me, but I actually set up email accounts. They have their own Google account now because you have to tie it to an account, and I was like, well, I'm not going to use my account. We'll just give them their own email. They're going to need it anyways. I'll make sure that nobody steals their name. And I thought about, well, what if I just emailed them stuff from time to time, and when they get older, they can read through them. And that might be fun. But
isn't that a Google commercial? Isn't that a Google Chrome commercial? I think, dear Sophie. I think it is.
Let's just say I stole it from that, but I don't know. I probably did not have a good enough original idea.
Oh my God, yeah, it's a wonderful commercial. Actually, I think it's a piece of content essentially because it tells such a story. But it's such a great little. Yeah, it's great. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, we will enough of my weirdness and sending my kids emails and all of this. But let's get back to the series. This is usually I start off with the hardest question, but for some reason I put it here. I don't know why. This is the question I'm probably most interested to hear from you, and we're talking about opportunity blindness and all that stuff. And I want to know, what is something that you are currently opting out of, kind of by omission, or really not looking for?
Really not looking for. It's funny, as I know I shared with you previously, I'm sort of at the opposite end of things now, in the sense that I find myself needing to say no to things, sometimes more often than I want to. So I have a lot of demands on my time, lots of requests for interviews and guest blog posts and speaking things and all kinds of things, which is wonderful. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for it. But at the same time, it's a lot, and my daughter is a senior in high school, and I just want to be around a little bit more this year. So I found myself saying no so that I can spend a little bit more time just sort of in a more relaxed state, not always anticipating being behind on something or having to go on another trip or hop on another airplane or the case may be. But I have found myself just pulling back a little bit, at least for this year. So in a sense, we're talking about opting out. In a sense, I'm opting in. I wouldn't say I'm opting out. I think I'm just pulling back slightly, at least this year, and I'll reassess as we get into the fall. But for right now, that's where I'm at. It's hard. It's really hard because, like I said, not only am I grateful for these opportunities, but I love speaking and I love meeting new people and talking to people, and so it's it's a little bit tricky to try to say no in a way that is conveys future interest, I guess is what I'm saying. But it's been a little bit of a challenge. I'm sort of wrestling with that one.
Well, you could just say that you are opting into something different, but if we wanted to get semantical about it, but
Yeah.
you are kind of just giving the whole thing away, because you just now, I could say go subscribe, because that was going to be Ann's big secret question that she was afraid to answer herself, but she gave it to you here in the show. So she's taking the magic out of just about everything, Ann. You're really making me work for it here today. No, but I want to push you. I want to push you a little bit harder on that. So what I mean by not, something that you are not, doing, when you don't have. When you're not looking for something. So let's take the example. You said Joe Polizzi is a good friend of yours. You have all these connections. You wrote these books. I mean, there are so many things that you could probably be doing if you wanted to, that maybe are beyond what you kind of see your peers doing. What is that? I mean, like, you could call somebody up today and say, let's do this because we can. Is there anything like that you're just kind of fighting off on the back of your head?
Honestly, I mean, I'm not Richard Branson. It's not like I'm thinking, what I should do? I should travel to the moon. I'm not thinking about stuff like that. I think that what I do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I definitely want to do more writing that's outside of marketing, but that's going to require a shift for me in mindset. So it's me going in a different direction. But I don't see myself doing that anytime soon, and it's not something that I'm necessarily saying no to. It's something that I'm putting off for a little while. But I started out as a writer. It's always been where my heart is, and the through line through my entire career has always been writing. Whether I've been writing for newspapers and magazines, or writing books, or writing marketing content, or being an editor for marketing profs, all that stuff. It's all about writing for me, editing. And so that really is where my heart is, and so I think, in the next iteration, what would I do next, or what will I be doing? Where do I see myself going? I think it would probably be producing something that's not necessarily related to marketing, but maybe a book of fiction, maybe a book of short stories. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I think about doing, but I'm not ready to do that right now. It's not where my head is. So that's probably a non-answer, but that's...
It is a little bit. I was going to come back a little bit more on it. So there's no greater problem to say this is what I see. This is the problems that I see. Like, I know this person who can help me do this, so let's go. There's nothing like that out there. I feel like there's got to be something in there.
Not really. No. I mean, the thing is, I just published Everybody Writes in the fall, and so I'm still really. That's really where my head still is. It's not like I'm ready to move on to another project, or I'm thinking about what's next, at least right now. I mean, I'm sure that there's stuff in the back of my mind that I am thinking about almost subconsciously, but there's nothing that I'm really...
That's what I was trying to pull out, and you're really fighting me on it. I'm trying to pull it out, but
it's just I don't know. It's like I'm not quite done. It's like I'm not the kind of person that jumps from project to project to project. Like, to me, Everybody Writes really was or is my it's so near and dear to my heart, and it really means a lot to me in terms of the content and the effort that I put into that book. I mean, it's very personal, and so in that sense, I'm not quite done with it. It's like I'm still into talking about it and marketing it and trying to help marketers understand the bigger messages that are in it. So, for me, that's it, I think, for 2015, and really helping marketers and businesses become better writers in a way that's really fun and accessible and doesn't feel like drudgery. That's really what I'm thinking about.
Well, I guess I'll have to deal with you making me feel a little bit more schizophrenic than normal, and I will have to make peace with my own thoughts that are scattered across, and know that you are a lot more focused than I. But we will wrap up with this final question. And there is this kind of big trend of saying no. Like that's kind of this like I would say trend of people, like what you said, like making sure that you say no to more things.
Mm.
So I mean, is there really power in saying no, or is there just really more room for regret down the road?
That's hilarious. I don't know, and honestly, I don't feel like there's a big.
That was my funniest question. I didn't think that was going to be a funny question. Of all the stuff that I had.
Question. It's just going to lead to more. I mean, pretty much, well, almost everything I do in some way leads to some sort of regret down the road. But that's probably just my personality. It's the Irish in me. I can't help it. So I don't know. I guess you'll have to ask me that question next year, and I'll next year when I see this come up on Time Hop, I'll reach out to tell you whether I have regrets or not. So I don't know. I mean, I think, again, everybody sort of makes their own decisions. I think for me, I mean, every time I say no, as I was expressing before, it does come with some measure of regret. I always wonder, should I have said no? Maybe I should have said yes. My brother always used to say to me, you live life with looking in the rearview mirror. And he's right. I do. I tend to look in the rearview mirror quite a bit. But that's probably just also just my nature. So I don't know. I'll let you know.
All right, and I will let you off the hook with that. I'm not quite satisfied, but we might have to follow up with that a little bit later. But Ann, I do appreciate you taking the time for coming on to the show. Obviously, you mentioned Everybody Writes a little bit, but talk about that a little bit more, or wherever else you might think people would want to check you out.
Sure. So one thing I am not opting out of is my personal blog this year. It's at annhandley.com, and I talk a little bit about writing and marketing and businesses there, but I also just talk a lot about life. So definitely check it out at annhandley.com. You can subscribe to get regular updates of that right on the website itself. You can find out about Everybody Writes at everybodywrites.com, or you can find it on Amazon at bit.ly/everybodywrites. Yeah, like I said, it's the book that I wrote to try to help businesses have more fun with their writing and just to make writing more accessible and for businesses to embrace the power of writing and of their words and of their story.
All right, Ann, well, fantastic stuff. And even though you already gave away most of what I'm going to tell people to go check out right now, if you do want to hear the fearless question Ann is most afraid to ask herself, it's a little better. It's a little better than what she said in this show. Fearlesslyquestioning.com/getfearless is where you can go ahead to opt in to grab that, along with a library of every other guest that we've had on the show where they ask themselves that fearless question they're most afraid to ask themselves in their own life and business. But Ann, really appreciate you taking the time to be here. We will catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.